Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. My sister was in a car accident, so I immediately called my husband, a star neurosurgeon. He promised he would perform the surgery himself. But when the time came, my husband had his intern, Chloe, who hadn't even graduated yet, take the lead. He stood off to the side, editing her graduate thesis. "Dr. Cole, I think when I was cutting the skull, I accidentally sliced into the patient's brain," Chloe said, her face suddenly pale. She ran over to him frantically and threw herself into his arms, tears streaming down her face. "The bleeding won't stop. What do I do?" My husband glanced at the flat line on the EKG. He paused for a moment, then gently patted her head and comforted her in a soft voice. "Don't worry, I'll take care of everything." He then walked out of the operating room and faced me, his expression flat as he looked at my anxious face. "The surgery failed," he said calmly. "You should make arrangements for your sister." How could a standard craniotomy fail? She was stable when she went into the OR. My eyes were red as I tried to rush into the operating room, but my husband pushed me away. "It failed. End of story. There's nothing to see. This was just her fate," he said impatiently. "With a car crash that bad, there was no point in even trying to save her. Dying early saved her a lot of suffering. Anna, stop making a scene." With that, he took the hand of his distraught intern and walked straight past me. I stared at their backs as they walked away. Chloe even had the nerve to glance back and give me a triumphant, provocative look. I couldn't help but laugh. He couldn't possibly think the person on that operating table was my sister. Could he? "Miss Shun, I know it's hard, but please accept my condolences," my assistant said with a sigh, her face full of sympathy. I replied calmly, "What do I have to be sad about?" My assistant froze, thinking I was just delirious with grief. The pity in her eyes deepened. "Miss Shun, if you think there was something wrong with the surgery..." She hesitated. "Should we contact our company's legal department and file a lawsuit against the hospital?" "A lawsuit won't be necessary, but you should still call legal. Have them draft a divorce agreement for me," I said, looking up. My gaze fixed on the figures of Ethan and Chloe disappearing around the corner. Chloe, the one responsible for all this, showed no remorse for just having killed someone. She was leaning affectionately against my husband. Ethan reached out and affectionately tapped the tip of her nose. The two of them were flirting shamelessly right in front of me, looking to be in excellent spirits. I was genuinely curious if Ethan would still be smiling once he found out that the person lying in that operating room wasn't my sister at all. It was his own precious sister, the apple of his eye. Just then, a nurse came over with a death certificate for me to sign. Since Dr. Cole was the one who killed her, he should be the one to sign it, I said coldly, refusing. What did his own sister have to do with me? His sister-in-law. Besides, I was about to become his ex-sister-in-law. "Mrs. Cole, I understand how you feel, but you need to think this through. Dr. Cole is your husband," the nurse frowned, reminding me. "If you make a scene, it will have a very negative impact on him." I let out a series of cold laughs, noted the name on her badge, and immediately filed a complaint. Seeing this, the nurse's face turned ugly. She snapped angrily, "Fine. If you won't sign, I'll just have to get Dr. Cole to deal with you himself." When Ethan had just started at the hospital, I donated $1 million to his department to improve the working environment and help him integrate better. Everyone from the hospital director down to the janitors knew how deeply in love I was with Ethan Cole. That must be why she felt so bold threatening me. But now my love for Ethan was completely dead. Threatening me with him at this point was just laughable. That evening, I was holding the divorce agreement drafted by my legal team, ready to send it to Ethan. But then I saw a photo posted on social media by his intern Chloe. The picture showed a candle at dinner with steak and red wine, and another photo of two hands forming a heart. One picture in particular caught my eye. A shot of Ethan's back in the medical affairs office deleting surveillance footage. "Had a little accident on the operating table today. If my mentor hadn't taken all the blame for me, this poor girl might not have been able to graduate," she wrote. "This poor girl has no way to repay him except by giving myself to him." Below it was a string of kissy face emojis. I smirked and liked the post. Screenshot. Save. Another piece of evidence secured. I then forwarded the divorce agreement to Ethan. Take a look. If there are no issues, come home and sign it. Less than a minute later, my phone rang. It was Ethan. Anna, what is the meaning of this? He demanded the second I answered. I suppressed the chill in my heart, about to discuss the divorce. Don't you dare try to frame Chloe. Her post has nothing to do with your sister's death. Anna, if you cause a scene at the hospital because of your paranoid fantasies, ruin Chloe's chances of graduating, and interfere with my career, we're getting a divorce. After his threat, he hung up. I stood there holding my phone, completely stunned. Even though my heart had already turned to ice and I had lost all hope in him, I still felt a sharp pang of pain. I had assumed he was calling because he'd seen the divorce agreement. I never imagined he was just calling to defend his little mistress, that he hadn't even looked at the papers. Ethan, I suggest you take a closer look at whose sister was actually on that operating table today before you bark at me again. I fought back my anger and sent him a text, but a red exclamation mark appeared next to the message. He blocked me. I laughed out of sheer anger. Fine. If he didn't care about his own sister, then why should I? Earlier today, I had been in the middle of a meeting with an important client at my company. Suddenly, I got the news that his sister, Mia, had been in a car crash. I immediately dropped everything and rushed to the hospital. But when I got there, I realized there wasn't a single member of his family with Mia. Called Ethan right away. He answered impatiently, saying he was on his day off and that I should just find another doctor at the hospital. Only after I insisted did he reluctantly agree to come. When he finally arrived, he had that intern Chloe with him. At the time, his sister had a cerebral hemorrhage and dangerously high intracranial pressure. She needed an emergency craniotomy. Ethan promised me he would perform the surgery himself. I thought it was a standard procedure and that everything would be fine, but I never expected to hear that the surgery had failed. To this day, Ethan still hasn't realized that the person in that operating room was his own sister, which proves he wasn't the one who performed the surgery. But what I was curious about was this. Mia's body had been at the hospital for a full day. The hospital should have notified his family by now. So why did Ethan still seem completely oblivious? As I was pondering this, I heard the lock turn. Ethan walked into the house, and with him was the young and vibrantly dressed Chloe. Dr. Cole, you took care of your wife's sister's body without her permission. What if she gets mad when she finds out? So what if she gets mad? That woman chased me like a stray dog for a whole year. If it weren't for her family's money and the help they could give me, do you really think I would have married her? Ethan said with contempt, wrapping his arm around her slim waist. But I took a huge risk for you today. How are you going to thank me? It all suddenly made sense. No wonder the Cole family hadn't heard anything. Ethan was worried I'd demand an autopsy and sue them. So, he used his influence at the hospital to dispose of his own sister's body without authorization. As a doctor, didn't he know that this wasn't just unethical but a crime? Tonight I'm all yours. You can do whatever you want, Chloe said, pressing herself against his chest with a blush. A smirk played on Ethan's lips. He scooped her up in a princess carry and started walking toward the bedroom. But as he took a step, he saw me leaning against the bedroom door frame, holding my phone, a faint smile on my face as I watched them. Anna, what are you doing here? Ethan blurted out, his face a mask of shock. This is my house. Why shouldn't I be here? I said, looking at them calmly. Don't mind me. You two carry on. Anna, your sister is dead. Instead of holding a vigil, you're just sitting at home. What kind of sister are you? Ethan said, putting Chloe down, his face dark. Seeing his shamelessness, the guilty party accusing the victim, I couldn't help but roll my eyes. He had the nerve to bring his intern to our home to do God knows what. And now he was questioning me. Anna, it's good you're home, Ethan said, his face expressionless. You wouldn't sign, and the hospital couldn't reach your family, so I signed the death certificate for you. With that, Ethan handed me a paper box wrapped in a plastic bag. These are your sister's ashes. Saves me the trip of delivering them. I had already anticipated that he wouldn't treat his own sister's remains with care. But seeing the shoddy packaging and the way the ashes spilled everywhere as he handed it to me, I couldn't control my anger any longer. Ethan, you're really good to your little darling, aren't you? I asked in a steely voice. in such a hurry to destroy the evidence. Don't you dare slander me. What evidence did I destroy? Ethan's expression turned grim. Humiliated and furious, he threw the box of ashes on the floor in front of me. Your sister was in a car accident. It was her own bad luck. I'm a doctor, not a god. I took a deep breath and bent down to pick up the box. I saw that less than half of the ashes remained. Have some respect for the dead. You of all people, a doctor, should know that you owe the deceased at least a basic level of dignity. I said, my fists clenched and my face pale with rage. Faced with my accusation, Ethan just said impatiently, the crematorium burns dozens of people a day. The ashes get mixed up. You can't tell who's who. What's the point of having so much? As long as there's enough to bury, that's all that matters. I was so angry I almost laughed. How could a human being say something like that? Doctor, ma'am, please don't fight. This is all my fault, Chloe suddenly said, starting to sob as she saw us arguing. I was the one who went to get the ashes. If I had known, I would have packed more. That way, even if some spilled, there would be more left. How could this be your fault? Ethan said, patting her head adoringly. He turned to me with a dismissive look. She, the sister, just abandons her sibling's body at the hospital, and then tries to use the death to blackmail us. You were kind enough to bring the ashes back for her. But not only is she not grateful, she tries to pin the blame on you. She's the one with no conscience. I almost lost my composure in the face of this shameless couple. This was beyond absurd. He botched a simple craniotomy and killed someone. Where did he get the audacity to expect my gratitude? But as the soon-to-be ex-sister-in-law, I didn't really have a reason to care. It was her own brother, however, who seemed eager to thank the person who killed his sister. If that's what he wanted, I had no objections. Dr. Cole, don't talk to your wife like that. She's probably just not thinking straight after losing her sister. Chloe pouted sincerely, covering Ethan's mouth while her eyes smiled. A flash of tenderness I had never seen before appeared in Ethan's eyes. Seeing that scene felt like a knife twisting in my gut. Ma'am, some things in life are just fate. You should let her rest in peace. Out here, her ashes could be scattered to the wind, Chloe said, blinking innocently as she held the box out to me. I pushed the box back with a cold laugh. Ethan should be the one to keep these ashes. As I pushed the box back, Chloe suddenly staggered backward and the plastic bag tore open. The rest of the ashes spilled onto the floor, sending up a cloud of dust that made me cough. Ma'am, I'm so sorry. If hitting me would make you feel better, then please hit me, Chloe said, slumping to the floor and looking pitifully wronged. But your sister's death really had nothing to do with me. Anna, have you lost your mind? Ethan strode forward angrily and slapped me hard across the face. He pointed a finger at me, his voice filled with disgust. Chloe was kind enough to bring you the ashes and you hit her. You're an unreasonable, crazy old hag. With that, he scooped Chloe up in his arms and turned to leave. Ethan, let's get a divorce. I held my burning cheek and took a deep breath. At this point, I had no energy left to argue. I just pulled out the divorce papers I had prepared. You want to divorce me? Ethan's head snapped up to look at me. His expression shifted from surprise to anger. Anna, I understand you're in a bad mood since your sister just died, he said coldly. Put those papers away, and I'll pretend this never happened. I looked at him calmly, my face devoid of emotion. If you don't agree to the divorce, I will see this case through to the very end. You don't actually think that just because you got rid of the body and deleted the surveillance footage, I have no way to sue you, do you? Ethan's face changed dramatically. Chloe's expression also filled with panic, and she nervously tugged at his sleeve. Anna, you're acting like a hysterical madwoman right now. It's disgusting. Ethan's expression was a twisted mess of conflict. He took a deep breath before finally spitting out. You want a divorce? Fine, I'll give you what you want. With that, he furiously signed his name on the agreement. See you at the courthouse tomorrow at 9 a.m. I collected the papers, a slight smile playing on my lips. He took Chloe's hand. As he was leaving, he turned back with a sneer. I hope you don't come crawling back to me tomorrow like a dog, begging me to stay. I went back to my parents' house and told them and my sister about the divorce. At first, my parents tried to talk me out of it, But after I explained what happened today, they were both furious. Ethan had acted this way because he mistakenly thought it was my family member who had died. That proved that if something truly happened to my family, he really would be that heartless. The next day, I gathered the divorce papers and was about to head to the courthouse. Unexpectedly, my in-laws showed up carrying funeral wreaths and paper money. We ran into each other right at the door. The moment my mother-in-law saw me, she started scolding me. "Anna, how can you be so thoughtless? Bringing up divorce with Ethan? You're just a small business owner. Our Ethan is a professional with a stable career. If you two really divorce, you'll be the one to regret it. Your father-in-law and I spent all of yesterday convincing him to drop the idea. You should call him right now and apologize." I ignored her and just laughed coldly. Had the old couple forgotten how their precious son got to where he is today? It was only because I had spent a fortune and begged everyone I knew that he got his position at his current hospital. My parents even swallowed their pride and asked an old friend to get him a fellowship at a top-tier hospital. That's the only reason Ethan earned his reputation as a star surgeon at such a young age. And now they thought I wasn't good enough for him. And you should just quit that little business of yours. It's time you and Ethan had a child. My mother-in-law continued, thinking my silence meant she was getting through to me. Now that your sister is gone, your parents only have you left. After they die, all their assets will go to their grandchild. That's a lot more reliable than you working so hard, isn't it? I ground my teeth in anger. Were they really laying out their greedy plans right to my face? You're the one who's dead. Your whole family is dead. Just then my sister rushed out with a broom, her face flushed with anger, and started swinging it wildly at them. For a moment my in-laws were too stunned to even dodge. They just stared at my sister in terror. How are you still alive? I'm young and beautiful. Of course I'm going to live to be 100. My sister retorted like a furious little kitten. But you two old fossils, your own daughter dies, and instead of holding a funeral at your own house, you come to our door with wreaths and funeral money, and you're scheming to get your hands on my parents' assets. You shameless old creeps. Why don't you just go die? My sister continued, rolling her eyes and mocking them relentlessly. Impossible. This is impossible. Ethan clearly said it was your sister, Anna, who was in the accident. I was the one who secretly told him to maybe botch the surgery. Wasn't it your sister who was in the accident? My mother-in-law stammered, her face pale and her body trembling. When she said that, a chill shot straight up my spine. It all clicked. No matter how much Ethan liked Chloe, this was a matter of life and death. How could he have dared to let an intern mess around? I never imagined that his own mother had encouraged him to intentionally kill my sister to get at my family's fortune. But his evil plan backfired and killed his own sister instead. I clenched my fists. Of course it wasn't my sister who was in the accident, I said coldly. It was Ethan's sister. At the time, I just said my sister was in a car accident. Who could have guessed he would assume it was mine? My mother-in-law didn't believe a word of it. You lying Anna, she shrieked, flailing her arms. My daughter is working in D.C. How could she possibly be back? You're just making up this ridiculous story because you want to divorce my son, aren't you? I shook my head gently and said flatly, Did you forget? Yesterday was your birthday. Mia was coming back to surprise you, but instead you had her killed. In the entire Cole family, only Ethan's sister Mia was a decent person. We had a good relationship as sisters-in-law. That's why I was so frantic when I heard she'd been in an accident. Before she came back, Mia had called me secretly, telling me she wanted to surprise her mom and asking me to keep it a secret. I never thought she'd get into a car accident on the way home. The accident was serious, yes, but it absolutely wasn't fatal. If Ethan hadn't let his intern run wild on the operating table, Mia would never have died. I don't believe you. I don't believe you. You're lying to me. My mother-in-law shrieked while my father-in-law had already collapsed onto the ground in shock. My mother-in-law tremblingly picked up her phone, trying to call her daughter. Her hands shook so much it took her a full minute to dial the number. Soon someone answered. Mia honey, you're okay, right? My mother-in-law said, her voice filled with relief. Thank God. I knew that Anna was lying to me. What kind of sister-in-law curses her own husband's sister to be in a car accident? Hello, this is General Hospital. Are you the deceased next of kin? A cold voice said from the other end of the line. Please come to the medical affairs office at your convenience to collect the deceased's personal effects. Impossible. What damn hospital? My daughter is working in D.C. How could she be in a hospital? Are you an actor that Anna hired? My mother-in-law screamed like a madwoman. Ma'am, please calm down, the person on the phone said patiently, but my mother-in-law had already collapsed to her knees, sobbing so hysterically she could barely breathe. My father-in-law slowly came to his senses and called Ethan. The call was immediately rejected. Shaking, he tried again. This time the phone rang for a long time before it was finally answered. Dad, I'm busy right now. What's up? He said, slightly out of breath. From the other end of the line, Chloe's unhappy grumbling could be heard. Hurry up, handsome. Your little patient is still waiting for you to give her a shot. You bastard. Get your ass back here now. My father-in-law roared, his face livid with rage. What happened? Ethan asked, frowning. Your sister is dead, and you still have the nerve to be fooling around out there. My father-in-law yelled, trembling with anger. Unexpectedly, Ethan just laughed lightly. Is that all? What does Anna's sister's death have to do with me? Her sister's dead? Isn't that even better? That woman tried to divorce me yesterday. But don't worry, Dad. All I have to do is snap my fingers, and she'll come crawling back like a good little dog. Everything the Shen family has will be mine sooner or later. Ethan's triumphant voice on the phone was like a knife twisting in my heart. I clenched my fists in fury. I wished I could reach through the phone and tear him limb from limb. I had originally thought that for the sake of our marriage, making him sign the divorce papers and leave with nothing was enough. But now I've changed my mind. I will make him pay the ultimate price. You son of... It wasn't Anna's sister in the accident. It was Mia, my father-in-law screamed, losing all control. How is that possible? Ethan was completely dumbfounded. He rushed over to my house. The moment he saw me, his eyes were burning with rage. Anna, what kind of games are you playing now, daring to lie to my parents that something happened to me? He stopped mid-sentence when he saw my sister standing next to me. His expression froze. How are you alive then? Who was on the operating table yesterday? I stared at him with a cold smile. Ethan, you were supposed to perform the surgery yourself, weren't you? Didn't you recognize whose sister was lying on that table? His eyes, now bloodshot, darted to Chloe. He grabbed her arm and asked in a hoarse voice, Tell me, who was on the operating table yesterday? Dr. Cole, you're hurting me? Chloe said, her eyes welling with tears. Ethan instinctively let her go. Only then did Chloe say pitifully, All I knew was that it was a girl on the table yesterday. I had no idea whose sister she was. But you'd recognize a photo, wouldn't you? I coolly took out my phone, found a picture, and asked calmly, Was this the girl on the operating table yesterday? Chloe hesitated, looking at the photo on my phone. She thought for a moment before nodding slightly. Think so. I remember when I cut her, there was a scar just like that on her forehead. Ethan collapsed to the ground in despair. That scar was from when he was drowning as a child. His sister had hit her head, saving him. He remembered she was bleeding profusely, but didn't even stop to wipe it away as her small body dragged him to shore. He had sworn to himself then that he would make his sister the happiest girl in the world. People talked about being obsessed with helping their brothers, but he would be obsessed with helping his sister his whole life. He never imagined he would be the one to kill her with his own hands. You killed my daughter. I'll kill you. My mother-in-law shrieked, charging at Chloe. Chloe screamed in terror and hid behind Ethan, sobbing. Dr. Cole, save me. I really didn't know it was your sister. Ethan quickly shielded her. Mom, this has nothing to do with Chloe, he said hoarsely. It's all my fault. You're going to protect the person who killed your sister? My mother-in-law stared at him in disbelief as if looking at a stranger. Ethan opened his mouth about to explain. Slap. My mother-in-law slapped him hard across the face. If you dare protect this little, then you can forget you ever had a mother. Ethan trembled. He wanted to explain, but no words came out. Now is not the time for this. Where is your sister's body? My father-in-law said in a raspy voice. Right. We have to bring Mia home, my mother-in-law said, snapping back to reality. Ethan's numb expression suddenly turned deathly pale. My in-laws took a few steps, but when they saw Ethan still standing frozen, they immediately realized something was wrong. My mother-in-law, who had been sharp her whole life, said hoarsely, "You say something. What did you do with your sister's body?" I was afraid Anna would keep pursuing the matter. So you what? My mother-in-law was swaying on her feet. I had her body cremated immediately. Ethan used every ounce of strength he had just to get the sentence out. The moment he finished speaking, my in-laws' vision went black and they both collapsed to the ground. Ethan scrambled forward to perform first aid. Chloe wanted to help too. But at the hospital, she had been too busy flirting with Ethan to learn even basic emergency procedures. She could only stand there wringing her hands. After a long time, my in-laws slowly came to. God, how could you be so cruel? I didn't even get to see my daughter one last time. My mother-in-law wailed, pounding the ground in despair. My father-in-law also muttered painfully to himself, "Worthless son. A disgrace. A total disgrace." I watched them without a flicker of emotion. What right did they have to blame God? They had brought all of this upon themselves. My sister secretly spat in their direction and muttered, "Serves them right now." The ashes of Ethan's sister were still scattered across the floor of my villa. When they arrived at the house, they stared at the ashes on the ground. When those ashes had first spilled, there had been a look of schadenfreude in Ethan's eyes. But now, knowing they were his own sister's ashes, he felt his heart being ripped apart. "You animal, is this how you treat your sister's remains? How could I have given birth to such a disgraceful son?" My mother-in-law broke down again. She grabbed a nearby chair and raised it to smash it over Ethan's head, but seeing her son's devastated expression, the chair froze in midair. My mother-in-law's gaze then fell on Chloe, who was clinging to Ethan's side. "It's all your fault, you little. If it weren't for you, my daughter would still be alive. I'll kill you." My mother-in-law swung the chair violently at Chloe. Chloe's pretty face went white with fear. Ethan raised his arm, and the chair slammed down on it. "Son, even now you're still protecting this little." My mother-in-law roared, her eyes blazing with fury. "Mom, it was all my fault. All of it. I'll hold the most beautiful funeral for my sister," Ethan said, cradling his arm, tears streaming down his face. "I'm afraid you won't have time for that," I said flatly. "Anna, what do you mean by that?" Ethan instinctively looked up. "The time is about right," I said calmly. Just as I finished speaking, a group of police officers burst in. "When did you call the police?" Ethan's face was filled with terror, and my in-laws were equally stunned. Watching their son being taken into custody by the police, they forgot all about their daughter's ashes and fell to their knees, begging me. "Anna, Ethan is your husband. If you call the police, you'll ruin him. Tell these officers it was all a misunderstanding." I looked at them with a cold smile, then at the uncollected ashes on the floor. I only felt that Mia didn't deserve to be born into such a family. In the courtroom, Chloe sat pitifully in the defendant's box. She looked pleadingly at Ethan, who was sitting next to her. Chloe's face was pale as she asked, trembling, "Dr. Cole, we were not going to be sentenced, are we?" "Don't worry. I won't let anything happen to you," Ethan said, taking a deep breath. I presented all the evidence I had collected. This included not only the recorded conversations with my in-laws but also the surveillance video from the medical office that Ethan had deleted, which I had a hacker friend of mine recover. In the jury box, the jurors watched the video. It showed Ethan entering the ORE without even glancing at the patient on the table. He ignored the sterile requirements of the operating room, took off his mask, and kissed Chloe on her masked lips. He then demanded that Chloe, in turn, perform the surgery. Chloe stood hesitantly at the operating table, not even knowing how to use the various instruments. The craniotomy was not a high-risk procedure, but it did involve opening the skull. Chloe and the intern first made a huge incision in Ethan's sister's scalp, and blood immediately gushed out, but she just started sawing away. After the incident, Ethan's first instinct wasn't to check on the patient, but to comfort Chloe in a soft voice. "This isn't medical malpractice. This is manslaughter. I can't believe a monster like this was hiding in a hospital. I request that he be punished severely. How did a demon like this ever become a doctor?" Watching the video, the jurors stood up one by one, their faces filled with rage. My own face had also turned grim. I thought about what would have happened if it really had been my family member on that table. How devastated would I have been watching this video? Faced with irrefutable evidence, Ethan offered no defense, but he took all the blame himself. He claimed that as Chloe's supervising doctor, he had forced her to perform the surgery to increase her surgical experience. He insisted the incident had nothing to do with Chloe. I killed my own sister. I'll accept whatever sentence you give me, Your Honor, Ethan said in a hoarse voice. But Chloe is innocent. She has a bright future ahead of her. I just hope that my mistake doesn't affect her future. My in-laws, emotionally shattered, started screaming curses at him and were removed from the courtroom. A flicker of relief crossed Chloe's face, thinking she was in the clear. I have one more piece of evidence. At that moment, I calmly produced another video. Ethan stared at me in disbelief, pointing a finger and cursing. Anna, what more do you want? Haven't you made me suffer enough? He struggled, trying to rush at me, but was held back securely. The current evidence was already enough for a conviction. He couldn't imagine what else I could have. I looked at him with a cold smile. He chose to protect the murderer who killed his own sister. And now he was trying to blame me for everything. To think that I once loved a scumbag like this, it just made me sick. As he glared at me with hatred in his eyes, I pressed play. The moment the video started, Chloe, who had just been breathing a sigh of relief, shot to her feet. Don't play it. She tried frantically to stop it, but it was too late. In the video, the now pitiful-looking Chloe was cockily crossing her legs, swirling a glass of red wine. Her innocent-looking face was twisted with a sinister expression that didn't belong. Yeah, I intentionally killed his wife's sister on the operating table. When that happens, his wife will definitely divorce him. That old fool is already completely obsessed with me. I've already got plenty of evidence of his bribes. After we get married, I'll secretly report him. His house, his savings, it'll all be mine. Huh. And that old man actually thinks I like him. Just the thought of him on top of me makes me sick. When the video ended, the courtroom was in an uproar. Ethan had completely lost his mind. This video is fake. It's all fake. Dr. Cole, please believe me. I really do love you, Chloe said frantically. I'll kill you. Ethan lunged at her. I'll haunt you even as a ghost. Ethan and Chloe were finished. They were both charged with premeditated murder. Now that their masks were off, they started viciously attacking each other. The entire trial devolved into a farce. My in-laws, who had just been allowed back into the courtroom, fainted again when they saw the video. With the final verdict, Ethan was sentenced to life in prison. Chloe was also found guilty of premeditated murder and sentenced to 30 years. Seeing the outcome, Ethan collapsed into his chair in despair. Chloe broke down, screaming and crying hysterically. This is unfair. I want to appeal. I was just drunk and talking nonsense. He was the one who made me perform the surgery. What does his sister's death have to do with me? But everyone in the room looked at her with cold, merciless eyes. The other people involved in the incident also received punishments of varying degrees. This included the other medical staff in the operating room and my mother-in-law, who had incited her son. Everyone else at the hospital, from the director down to the regular nurses in the department, was implicated. The hospital's reputation plummeted. Many families whose loved ones had died at that hospital, especially in surgeries performed by Ethan, gathered at the hospital entrance, demanding an explanation. But none of that had anything to do with me anymore. I walked out of the courthouse doors. A gentle autumn breeze brushed against my face, feeling like a comforting embrace. Mia, I've gotten you justice. I hope you're happy in heaven, I whispered to the sky. While in custody, Ethan requested to see me one last time. I refused without a second thought. A man like that, whether he wanted to repent or curse me, had nothing to do with me anymore. End of story.